Ambassador Jake Morrison sat in the cold metal chair that humans had been given in the Galactic Council chamber. The chair was too small and uncomfortable, just like everything else the aliens had provided for his species over the past 3 years. Around him, the massive chamber buzzed with sounds from dozens of different alien races. The bug-like Vex'Thai made clicking noises with their sharp mandibles. The floating gas creatures called Etherians hummed in musical tones that hurt human ears. The rock people from the Granite Consortium spoke so slowly that their words took minutes to complete. Jake looked at his watch. They had been sitting here for 6 hours today, just like yesterday, and the day before that. For 3 months, he had brought the same proposals to this chamber. Humanity wanted permission to settle on empty planets in the outer rim. They had found 17 worlds with no life, no claims, and no problems. Perfect places for human colonies. But every time Jake presented the paperwork, the aliens found new reasons to delay. Captain Lisa Brooks sat next to him, her military uniform crisp despite the long hours. She was here as the human military representative, though Jake knew she was getting tired of all the talking, too. Lisa had fought in 3 wars before joining the diplomatic corps. She understood action better than endless meetings. The tall blue alien from Zephyr Prime stood up at his speaking platform. His name was something Jake could not pronounce, full of sounds human throats could not make. The translator device hanging from the ceiling turned his blinking light patterns into words. The human application for colony rights in Sector 7. 7-9 requires additional environmental impact studies, the Zephyrian said. We must consider the effects on nearby stellar phenomena. The gravitational disruption from human settlements could affect trade routes used by established civilizations. Jake felt his jaw tighten. They had submitted environmental studies 8 months ago. The same studies had been approved for 3 other species in the past year. The only difference was that those species had been in the Council for thousands of years. Humans had only been here for 3 years. Dr. Amy Patterson, the human science advisor, leaned forward in her chair. Ambassador Morrison, we provided gravitational impact assessments in our initial submission. The nearest established trade route is 47 light-years away. Our colonies would have 0 effect on shipping lanes. The Etherian representative floated higher in the chamber, his gas form shifting colors. The humans speak of science, but they are young. They do not understand the delicate balance of space. Perhaps in another century, when they have learned patience, such requests might be considered. Another century. Jake had heard this before. The aliens always talked about humans being young and impatient. They seemed to forget that humans lived less than 100 years. A century was a lifetime. For the rock people of the Granite Consortium, a century was like a weekend. For the energy beings who lived for thousands of years, human lifespans were nothing. With respect, Jake said, standing up. We have been patient. We have followed every protocol. We have submitted every document you have requested. We have answered every question. Our people need room to grow. We have found empty worlds that harm no one. The chamber grew quieter. Other alien representatives turned to look at the human section. Jake could feel their eyes, sensors, and other detection methods focused on him. He did not care anymore. The head of the Vex'Thai delegation, a massive insect with 4 arms, clicked, his mandibles rapidly. The humans demand much for such a new species. They have been in space for only a few hundred years. The Vex'Thai have been spacefaring for 12,000 years. We know the proper way to expand, slowly, carefully, with respect for those who came before. Lisa Brooks stood up next to Jake. Her hand moved to rest on her sidearm, not as a threat, but out of habit. How many empty worlds has your species colonized in the past 100 years? She asked. The Vex'Thai representative paused. That is not relevant to this discussion? I think it is, Lisa continued, because the answer is 0. Your species has not established a new colony in 300 years. You talk about expansion, but you do not expand. You talk about growth, but you do not grow. You just sit here and talk." An angry buzzing sound filled the chamber as various alien species began communicating rapidly in their own languages. The universal translator could not keep up with all the voices at once. Jake heard fragments of translated speech about human arrogance and proper procedures and ancient wisdom. Dr. Patterson gathered her files and data tablets. "Ambassador, I have 17 more proposals here. Mining rights for asteroids, research station permits, trade agreements, all of them have been sitting in committee for over a year." Jake looked around the chamber one more time. He saw the same. Faces that had been dismissing human requests for 3 years. The same attitudes, the same delays, the same excuses. Nothing was going to change. These aliens had built a system that worked for them, and they saw no reason to let newcomers upset their comfortable arrangements. "Captain Brooks," Jake said loudly enough for his voice to carry across the chamber, "please gather our materials. We are leaving." Lisa smiled for the first time in months. "Yes, sir." Dr. Patterson was already packing her research data. The other human representatives began collecting their documents and files. Jake walked to the center of the human delegation area and activated his personal communicator so his voice would reach every corner of the massive chamber. "Members of the Galactic Council," he announced, "humanity formally withdraws from these proceedings. We thank you for your time and consideration. We will find our own way forward." The chamber fell completely silent. Even the constant humming and clicking and rumbling of alien communication stopped. Jake could hear his own heartbeat as he walked toward the exit. Behind him, Lisa and the other humans followed in formation. As they reached the large doors that led out of the chamber, Jake heard the first confused voices behind them. Aliens asking what had just happened. Translators working to explain the concept of withdrawal to species who had never seen anyone leave the council before. Jake did not look back. He had spent 3 years trying to work within their system. Now it was time to try something different. Outside the chamber, human ships were waiting. Empty worlds were still empty, and humanity had never needed permission to be great before. 3 days had passed since the humans walked out of the Galactic Council chamber. Counselor Zelnara of the Aquatic Confederation floated in her water-filled observation pod, watching the emergency session unfold below. The massive chamber felt different without the human delegation. Their small section now stood empty, the uncomfortable metal chairs they had complained about still arranged in neat rows. The alien representatives seemed confused. For 3,000 years, no species had ever left the council voluntarily. Members were either expelled for crimes against galactic law or destroyed by war. They did not simply walk away from the greatest governing body in the known galaxy. Zelnara's gill slits fluttered with nervousness. She had received disturbing reports from her intelligence networks. The humans were not sitting quietly on their home worlds feeling sorry for themselves. They were moving, fast. Prime Minister Kate Williams appeared on the main viewing screen. She was broadcasting from somewhere called New Geneva, which intelligence reports said was on a planet called Kepler 442b. The humans had never mentioned this world during their 3 years in the Council. In fact, most alien species believed humans only controlled their birth planet Earth and a few nearby colonies. Kate looked calm and professional. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple style. She wore a blue suit that looked formal but not threatening. When she spoke, her voice was steady and confident. "Members of the Galactic Council," Kate began, "I want to address the concerns that have been raised about humanity's recent actions. We have not abandoned our commitment to peaceful coexistence with our galactic neighbors. We have simply chosen to pursue our goals through different means." The Vexthai representative who had argued with the humans 3 days ago clicked his mandibles rapidly. The humans showed disrespect for established order. They cannot simply ignore thousands of years of precedent and protocol. Kate smiled slightly. "Counselor, we spent 3 years following your protocols. We submitted every form, answered every question, and waited patiently for every committee review. Our applications were complete and valid. The delays were bureaucratic, not procedural. Admiral Ben Foster appeared on a second screen. He was standing on what looked like the bridge of a human warship. Through the windows behind him, Zelnara could see other ships, many other ships. To address concerns about human military movements, Ben said, "We have positioned defensive fleets at several hyperspace junction points. These are purely precautionary measures. We are not threatening anyone. We are simply ensuring safe passage for human vessels as we establish our new colonies." The chamber erupted in confused chatter. New colonies? The humans had been asking. Permission to build colonies for months. How could they have new colonies already? Dr. Amy Patterson appeared on a third screen. She was clearly on a planet's surface, with construction equipment and temporary buildings visible behind her. As of this morning, humanity has established 17 research stations and preliminary settlements in the Outer Rim territories. All locations are on previously unclaimed worlds with no native life forms. Environmental impact assessments were completed months ago during our council application process. The Etherian representative's gaseous form shifted to an angry red color. This is impossible. Colonial establishment requires years of planning and preparation. Survey teams, infrastructure development, population transport. These things cannot be done in 3 days. Amy nodded politely. You are correct that traditional council colonies require extensive preparation time. However, human colonial technology is designed for rapid deployment. Our survey teams have been mapping target worlds for over a year. Our construction ships were already loaded and ready for deployment, pending council approval. When approval became unnecessary, we simply proceeded. Zelnara felt a chill in her water tank. The humans had been planning this for a year. They had not been sitting in council chambers desperately hoping for alien approval. They had been preparing for the possibility that approval would never come. Commander Steve Lucas appeared on yet another screen. He was standing in what looked like a space station command center. I want to address trade concerns, he said. Human merchant vessels will continue to operate throughout the galaxy. However, we will no longer be restricted to council-approved trade routes. We have identified several alternative shipping lanes that will reduce travel time and costs for all parties involved. The Granite Consortium's elderly representative spoke so slowly that the translator had trouble keeping up. Humans must understand that established routes exist for important reasons. Safety protocols have been developed over millennia. Steve nodded respectfully. We appreciate the consortium's concern for safety. Our navigational computers have identified routes that are actually safer than current council standards. We will be happy to share this data with any interested parties. The Zephyrian representative, who had been most dismissive of human requests, began blinking rapidly. The humans speak as if they have authority to establish independent trade routes. They are a junior species with limited technology and resources. Senator Claire Johnson appeared on the main screen, replacing Kate Williams. She was sitting in what looked like a legislative chamber, with other humans visible in the background. Counselor, I think there may have been some misunderstandings about human capabilities. We chose to work within council frameworks not because we lacked alternatives, but because we believed cooperation was preferable to independence. Recent events have caused us to reconsider that position. Admiral Ben Foster reappeared on his screen. To clarify our military positioning, human fleets are now controlling access to hyperspace junctions 7, 14, and 21. These positions allow us to monitor traffic and ensure the safety of human vessels. We are not preventing other species from using these routes, but we are requiring advance notification of military movements. The chamber fell silent. Those 3 hyperspace junctions controlled access to some of the most important trade routes in the galaxy. If the humans could actually control them, they had just positioned themselves as a major galactic power overnight. Zelnara checked her intelligence reports again. Human ships had appeared at all 3 locations simultaneously. They had not traveled there from known human space. They had simply appeared, as if they had been hiding in deep space for months, waiting for orders. The Vextai representatives' mandibles stopped clicking. "How many ships do the humans possess?" Admiral Ben's expression did not change. "Enough." The simple answer sent a wave of unease through the chamber. For 3 years, aliens had assumed humans were a small, struggling species grateful for Council protection. Now they were beginning to realize they might have been very wrong about human strength and capabilities. The screens went dark, ending the human transmission. The Galactic Council was left sitting in silence, trying to understand what had just happened to their carefully ordered galaxy. 2 weeks had passed since the humans left the Galactic Council, and the economic shockwaves were spreading faster than anyone had expected. Trade Administrator Vex Kara of the Hive Collective stared at her reports in disbelief. The numbers did not make sense. How had one species become so important to galactic commerce without anyone noticing? The first major crisis hit the medical sector. Dr. Amy Patterson had been working with 5 different alien species on advanced healing technologies. Her research team had developed new treatments for diseases that affected multiple species. When she pulled her data and equipment from the joint laboratories, the entire Healing Worlds Compact found themselves unable to continue their work. The Etherian medical facilities were the first to send desperate messages. Their latest epidemic. Response systems relied on human-designed bioscanners. Without Amy's team providing updates and maintenance, the scanners began failing within days. Thousands of gaseous beings were at risk from a spreading infection that their old equipment could not detect properly. Commander Steve Lucas received the first official communication from the Vextai Collective 3 days ago. The message was simple: immediate approval for all 17 human colonial requests. Steve's response had been polite but devastating. He thanked them for their offer and explained that humanity would review their proposal and provide an answer within 2 years, pending internal committee evaluation. The Vextai had been using their own bureaucratic timeline against them. Steve knew it. They knew it. And everyone in the galaxy was beginning to understand the message. The real panic began when the gravity generators started failing. Tony Rodriguez had been quietly supplying replacement parts for artificial gravity systems across 60% of the galaxy. His manufacturing plants produced the small but critical components that kept space stations, ships, and orbital platforms functioning properly. When Tony redirected his production facilities to support human expansion instead of galactic maintenance contracts, the effects were immediate. The Etherian deep space mining operations were the first to feel the impact. Their massive gas-harvesting platforms relied on human gravity generators to maintain stable working environments. Without replacement parts, the platforms began shutting down one by one. The Granite Consortium discovered they had an even bigger problem. Their ancient silicon-based technology was incompatible with most modern galactic systems. They had been relying on human engineers to build interface bridges between their equipment and standard galactic networks. Chief Engineer Maria Santos had designed most of those bridges personally. When Maria pulled her engineering teams from consortium projects, their communications with the rest of the galaxy began breaking down. Their representatives could no longer participate effectively in council meetings because their translation systems could not connect to the main galactic network. Senator Claire Johnson appeared on galactic news networks from Frontier Station, which intelligence reports suggested was humanity's new capital. The space station was massive, far larger than anything the Council had believed humans could build. Behind Claire, humans and several alien species worked together in what looked like a busy government center. "We want to address concerns about our recent business decisions," Claire said calmly. "Humanity is not punishing anyone or seeking revenge. We are simply prioritizing our resources to support our own expansion efforts. Any species interested in genuine partnership agreements are welcome to contact our trade representatives. The HFY's keyword was partnership, not membership in human organizations, not submission to human authority, but partnership. Equal relationships between independent civilizations. The first species to accept human partnership offers were the small traders and frontier colonies that the Council had largely ignored. The Kalari were a peaceful species that had been trying to join the Council for 200 years. Their applications were always rejected because they did not have enough territory or population to meet Council membership requirements. Captain Nick Thompson's cargo fleet made contact with Kalari merchants and offered them direct trade agreements. No Council approval needed, no bureaucratic delays, no membership requirements. Just business between equals. Within days, Kalari ships were carrying human goods to markets throughout the outer territories. The Zephyrian hegemony made the first major military mistake. Their admirals decided that humans were becoming too independent and needed to be reminded of their place in the galactic order. A Zephyrian fleet moved to blockade the human colonies in the Andromeda approach. Captain Nick Thompson's response was swift and humiliating. Human stealth ships had been watching the Zephyrian fleet since they left port. When the aliens arrived at the human colonies, they found their ships' engines disabled, their weapons offline, and their life support systems reduced to minimum power. The humans had not fired a single shot. They had simply used advanced electronic warfare techniques to shut down the Zephyrian ships completely. The alien crews were left floating helplessly in space until rescue vessels arrived 3 days later. Nick broadcast a message to the stranded fleet. Your crews are safe and your ships are undamaged. Please consider this a demonstration of human defensive capabilities. We prefer peaceful solutions, but we will protect our people and territory if necessary. The most shocking revelation came from Dr. Helen Ross, humanity's former xenobiology advisor. She published her complete research files on the galactic networks, making them freely available to any species that wanted them. The files contained detailed biological information about every major Council species, including their medical vulnerabilities, genetic weaknesses, and potential biological weapons that could be used against them. Helen's message was clear. This information represents years of research that humanity conducted as part of our Council membership responsibilities. We are sharing it freely as a gesture of good faith. We hope it will be used for medical advancement and mutual understanding rather than conflict. The implications were terrifying for Council species. The humans had possessed detailed knowledge of how to potentially harm or control every major galactic civilization, but they had kept that information secret and unused. They could have been developing biological weapons or planning military campaigns based on alien vulnerabilities. Instead, they had chosen cooperation and peaceful coexistence. Now that information was available to everyone, including the smaller species that had been excluded from Council protection. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted overnight. The Mao emergency council session was called for the next day, but only half the representatives attended. The other half were too busy dealing with industrial failures, medical emergencies, and economic disruptions caused by the sudden absence of human support systems. The galaxy was learning that humanity had become far more important to galactic civilization than anyone had realized, and their departure was unraveling thousands of years of established order. 1 month after the human walkout, the Galactic Council was facing complete collapse. Emergency sessions were being called every day, but fewer representatives showed up each time. Some species were too busy dealing with infrastructure failures to attend meetings. Others had begun secret negotiations with human colonies, hoping to secure replacement technology and trade agreements. Supreme Chancellor Morthak of the Central Authority called the most important council session in 3,000 years. The Sake ancient chamber felt empty with so many vacant delegation pods. The Etherian section was completely dark because their ships could not maintain life support for the journey to the Council homeworld. The Granite Consortium had only sent one representative because their communication systems were still failing. Morthak's four arms gestured dramatically as he addressed the remaining delegates. We face an unprecedented crisis. The humans have not simply left our organization. They have begun actively undermining the stability of galactic civilization. Intelligence Director Kate Harrison appeared on the main viewing screen from what appeared to be a human military command center. She was not there to negotiate or apologize. She was there to deliver information. Members of the Council, Kate began, we have become aware of military preparations being made by several species against human colonies. We want to address these concerns directly and publicly. The Zephyrian military representative tried to interrupt, but Kate continued speaking. 3 days ago, the Zephyrian hegemony attempted to blockade human settlements in the Andromeda approach. Their fleet was disabled without casualties and safely returned to Zephyrian space. We consider this matter closed, but we want to prevent similar misunderstandings. Admiral Ben Foster joined Kate on the screen. Behind him, tactical displays showed ship movements throughout the galaxy. Human defensive fleets are now positioned at 17 strategic locations. We are monitoring all military traffic in regions containing human colonies or trade routes. Any hostile movements toward human targets will be met with appropriate responses. The chamber buzzed with angry communication from various alien species. The idea that humans were monitoring galactic military movements was shocking. Most Council species had assumed human space surveillance was limited to their own small territory. Ben activated a star map that filled the viewing screen. Red dots marked human colonies, blue lines showed human trade routes, and yellow triangles indicated human fleet positions. The display covered nearly half the known galaxy. This is impossible, the Vexthai military advisor clicked rapidly. Our intelligence networks show no evidence of such extensive human presence. These colonies and fleets cannot exist. Dr. Amy Patterson appeared on a second screen. She was standing in what looked like a massive space construction facility. Behind her, workers from several different species were building what appeared to be starships. The Council's intelligence networks have been monitoring known human space for 3 years. What you missed is that known human space represents less than 10% of actual human territory. The revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. If humans controlled 10 times more territory than the Council believed, then their population, resources, and military strength were also vastly underestimated. Tony Rodriguez appeared on a third screen from what appeared to be an asteroid mining operation. We want to address the industrial disruptions that have affected several Council species. Human manufacturing facilities were providing critical components for galactic infrastructure, but those contracts were negotiated through Council trade frameworks that no longer apply to human operations. The Etherian representative managed to float closer to his communication device despite his species' ongoing technical problems. The humans deliberately created dependencies and then exploited them when they left the Council. This is economic warfare. Tony shook his head calmly. Council trade regulations prevented us from forming direct partnerships with individual species. All our contracts had to go through Council approval processes and follow Council pricing guidelines. We were not allowed to offer better terms or more efficient services because that would create unfair competition for Council member businesses. Chief Engineer Maria Santos appeared on yet another screen. She was clearly on a planet's surface, with what looked like an entire city being constructed behind her. Our fusion reactor designs have been released into open source availability. Any species can now build their own power generation systems without depending on Council-controlled energy networks. The technical specifications are freely available on all galactic communication networks. The implications were staggering. Species that had been dependent on Council infrastructure for energy could now build their own systems using human technology. This would allow smaller civilizations to become truly independent for the first time in thousands of years. Commander Steve Lucas reappeared from his space station command center. We have received over 300 requests for direct trade, partnerships in the past month. We are currently reviewing these applications and will respond within 60 days. Priority will be given to species that demonstrate genuine interest in mutual cooperation rather than hierarchical relationships. The Granite Consortium's representative spoke with obvious strain in his slow voice. Humans are attempting to replace the Council with their own authority structure. Senator Claire Johnson appeared on the main screen, replacing the tactical displays. Behind her, representatives from dozens of species were working together in what appeared to be some kind of diplomatic facility. Counselor, we are not seeking to replace your authority. We are simply offering alternatives to species that want them. Every civilization has the right to choose their own diplomatic and economic relationships. The most shocking moment came when Dr. Helen Ross appeared on screen from what was clearly Earth itself. Behind her, the blue skies and green landscapes of humanity's home world were visible for the first time in Council history. The humans had never revealed their birth. Planet's location during their 3 years of Council membership. We want to address security concerns, Helen said calmly. Earth's location has been classified since first contact because we were not certain about the intentions of galactic civilization toward less advanced species. Recent events have confirmed that our caution was justified. The chamber fell completely silent. The humans had been hiding their homeworld because they did not trust the Council. They had been operating from scattered colonies and outposts while keeping their true center of power secret. The level of planning and preparation this revealed was beyond what any Council species had imagined possible from a supposedly primitive civilization. Admiral Ben Foster returned to the screen. Human policy going forward is simple. We will defend ourselves and our allies against any aggression. We will trade freely with any species that wants honest partnership. We will share our technology with civilizations that prove themselves trustworthy. We will not submit to authority structures that treat us as inferior. The screens went dark, leaving the Council chamber in stunned silence. The aliens were beginning to understand that they had not been dealing with a junior species seeking membership in their organization. They had been dealing with an advanced civilization that had been evaluating them and found them wanting. 6 months had passed since the humans walked out of the Galactic Council chamber, and the galaxy looked completely different. The massive council building on Centralis Prime stood mostly empty. Most of the alien delegations had returned to their home worlds to deal with the chaos that humanity's departure had created. The few species that remained were desperately trying to hold together what was left of their ancient organization. President Dan Murphy stood in the Oval Office of humanity's government building on Earth. Through the large windows behind his desk, he could see the blue oceans and white clouds of humanity's home world. For the first time in galactic history, human leaders were conducting major diplomatic meetings from their actual planet instead of hiding behind scattered colonies and outposts. Today was special. Representatives from the remaining Council species had requested a meeting, not to demand that humans return to their organization, but to ask for help in preventing total galactic collapse. Ambassador Jake Morrison entered the office, followed by Captain Lisa Brooks and Dr. Amy Patterson. Jake looked much more relaxed than he had during those terrible months of Council meetings. He was no longer trying to convince arrogant aliens to treat humanity with basic respect. Now he was dealing with desperate civilizations who finally understood what they had lost. The Kalari Federation has officially joined our alliance, Jake reported. That brings our total membership to 47 species. The Free Trade Consortium now controls more territory and shipping routes than the old Council ever did. Lisa smiled as she placed a data tablet on Dan's desk. Our defensive agreements are working perfectly. 3 more attempts at piracy were stopped this week by joint human-alien patrol fleets. The shipping lanes are actually safer now than they were under Council protection. Amy's report was even better. The medical cooperation programs have been incredibly successful. We now have joint research facilities with 23 different species. The cure for Etherian rot sickness was completed yesterday, and the Vextai have shared their biological adaptation techniques with our agricultural colonies. Dan nodded as he reviewed the reports. The new galactic order was working better than anyone had expected. When humans stopped trying to join the existing system and started building their own, dozens of other species had eagerly joined them. The difference was simple but important. Membership in human-led organizations was based on cooperation and mutual benefit, not ancient hierarchies and bureaucratic traditions. A communication alert sounded, and the main viewing screen activated. Counselor Zelnara of the Aquatic Confederation appeared, floating in her water-filled chamber. Behind her, representatives from the Vextai Collective, the Granite Consortium, and 3 other major council species waited nervously. President Murphy, Zelnara began, her gill slits fluttering with obvious anxiety. We request permission to discuss terms for ending the current galactic crisis. Dan leaned back in his chair. Counselor, there is no crisis from humanity's perspective. Our colonies are thriving, our trade networks are expanding, and our alliance members are more prosperous than they have been in centuries. What crisis are you referring to? The Vextai representative moved closer to their communication device. The breakdown of established galactic order has created chaos in multiple sectors. Piracy has increased, trade disputes have multiplied, and several minor wars have begun between species that were previously kept peaceful by Council authority. Captain Lisa Brooks stepped forward. Counselor, piracy has actually decreased in areas under Free Trade Consortium protection. Our patrol fleets respond to threats within hours instead of the weeks it took Council peacekeeping forces. As for the minor wars you mentioned, those conflicts existed before. The Council simply ignored them because the fighting species were too small to matter. Dr. Amy Patterson activated a holographic display showing galactic health statistics. Medical cooperation between species has reached unprecedented levels since the formation of our research alliances. Disease outbreaks that would have killed millions under the old Council system are now contained within days. The Granite Consortium's elderly representative spoke in his painfully slow manner. The humans have created competing authority structures that undermine thousands of years of established governance, Ambassador Jake Morrison replied with a slight smile. Counselor, we have not undermined your authority. We have simply provided alternatives for species that wanted them. You are free to continue governing any civilizations that choose to remain under Council jurisdiction. That was the heart of the matter. The old Council had maintained power by being the only option available. When humans created alternatives based on equality and cooperation, instead of hierarchy and bureaucracy, most species preferred the new options. Senator Claire Johnson appeared on a second screen from the Free Trade Consortium headquarters on Frontier Station. Behind her, humans worked alongside representatives from dozens of different species in a busy diplomatic center that looked nothing like the cold formality of the old Council chamber. We want to make an offer to the remaining Council species, Claire announced. Our alliance organizations are open to any civilization that wants to join. Membership requires only a commitment to peaceful cooperation and mutual respect. There are no requirements for minimum territory, population, or technological advancement. There are no ancient hierarchies or traditional privileges. The offer hung in the air for several moments. The Council species were being invited to join the system that was replacing them, but only as equals among equals. Counselor Zelnara's water tank bubbled as she spoke. What guarantee do we have that human organizations will not eventually become as bureaucratic and rigid as you claim the Council became? President Dan Murphy stood up and walked to the window overlooking Earth's Natural landscape. Counselor, our government systems are designed with term limits, regular elections, and constitutional protections against the concentration of power. But more importantly, we learned from watching the council. We saw what happens when organizations become more concerned with maintaining their own authority than serving their members. Admiral Ben Foster appeared on a third screen from his fleet command ship. From a military perspective, the new alliance structure is far more effective than council peacekeeping ever was. Our response times are faster, our coordination is better, and our member species actually want to work together instead of being forced to cooperate by bureaucratic mandate. The transmission continued for another hour as human leaders explained how their new galactic order functioned. The system was not perfect, but it was built on principles that the old council had forgotten. Respect for all members regardless of size or age, quick responses to problems instead of endless committee meetings, and genuine cooperation instead of forced compliance. When the call ended, Dan Murphy looked out at Earth's sky and smiled. Humanity had tried to join the galaxy's existing order and been rejected. So they had built something better. The species that had treated humans as junior partners were now asking to join human-led organizations as equal members. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the best way to change a broken system is to walk away and build a new one.